Notice the person in every room who says the least. Not because they have nothing to say. Watch their eyes. They are processing everything. Every word, every reaction, every shift in tone. While everyone else is already talking, they are still thinking. And somewhere along the way, the world decided that silence means having nothing to offer, that the loudest voice in the room must be the smartest one, that if you are not speaking, you must not be thinking much at all. But watch closely enough, and you will notice something strange. The quietest person in the room is often the one who says the one sentence at the end that changes how everyone else sees the entire conversation. This is not shyness. This is not social anxiety. This is something else entirely. Something the world has never had a name for. If you have spent your whole life being the quiet one, being told to speak up more, being underestimated in rooms full of people who talk far more than they think, this video is going to explain exactly why. Stay till the end, because the last point is the one that finally tells you what your silence has actually been doing this whole time. Let's begin. Point number 1. Speaking fast and thinking fast are not the same thing. Most people confuse the two. They see someone respond instantly, fill every silence, never pause before speaking, and they assume that person must be the sharpest mind in the room. But speed of speech is not speed of thought. Speed of speech is often the absence of filter. It is saying the first thing that surfaces, without checking it, without weighing it, without asking whether it is actually true, useful, or necessary. Deep thinkers work differently. When something is said, their mind does not immediately produce a response. It does something slower and far more demanding. It tests the idea. It checks it against everything else they know. It considers 3 or 4 possible responses and quietly discards the ones that are incomplete. By the time a shallow thinker has already spoken 5 sentences, a deep thinker is still on their first one, because their first one has to actually be right. This is not slowness. This is precision. And precision, by definition, takes longer than speed ever will. Point number 2, every word spoken is weighed before it leaves. Here is what almost nobody understands about a quiet mind. For a deep thinker, speaking is not free. Every sentence carries weight. Every claim has to be something they would still stand behind tomorrow. Every opinion has to survive their own internal cross-examination before it is allowed to leave their mouth. So while other people are speaking in real time, testing ideas out loud, correcting themselves mid-sentence, thinking as they talk, the deep thinker is doing all that thinking silently before a single word is spoken. This is exhausting in a way most people never see. It looks like stillness from the outside. It looks like disengagement, even boredom. But internally, it is one of the most active processes a mind can perform. And because so much labor happens before the words arrive, deep thinkers often say far less in a conversation than everyone else. Not because they have less to say, but because most of what crosses their mind gets filtered out before it is deemed worth saying out loud. The world sees the 10% that gets spoken. It never sees the 90% that got quietly evaluated and set aside. Point number 3. Silence is often active observation, not absence. When a deep thinker goes quiet in a group, most people assume the conversation has lost them. It hasn't. It has the opposite of lost them, in that silence. They are reading the room in ways that talking would actually interfere with. They are noticing who agreed too quickly, who changed the subject the moment it got uncomfortable, who is saying one thing while their body language says another. They are building a complete picture of the conversation that most people, too busy formulating their next sentence, never even see. Talking requires attention, and attention is a limited resource. Every second spent thinking about what to say next is a second not spent absorbing what is actually happening in the room. Deep thinkers instinctively protect that attention. They would rather understand a room completely and say one accurate thing than understand it partially and say 10 forgettable ones. This is why, when they finally do speak, it often lands differently, because it is not a reaction. It is a conclusion, built on everything they were quietly gathering while everyone else was busy being heard. Point number 4. They have learned that most words change nothing. This point explains something that looks like withdrawal, but is actually wisdom. Deep thinkers tend to notice, over time, a pattern most people never consciously register. Most conversations do not actually need more words. Most arguments are not resolved by talking longer. Most opinions people share out loud were never going to be changed by anything said in response. So somewhere along the way, a quiet calculation starts happening beneath the surface. Is this worth saying? Will this actually change anything? Or will this simply be one more voice added to a room that already has enough of them? And very often, the honest answer is that speaking would accomplish nothing except making noise. So they don't. Not because they lack the confidence, but because they have learned that restraint is sometimes the more intelligent choice than participation. This is difficult for others to understand, because most people equate silence with submission. But for a deep thinker, choosing not to speak is often the exact same decision-making process as choosing to speak. It is simply landing on a different answer. Point number 5. When they finally speak, it carries a different kind of weight. This is the part that explains everything else. Because deep thinkers speak so rarely relative to how much they process, their words carry a kind of density that constant talkers can never replicate. When someone who says very little suddenly says something, people listen differently. It is not because the words are louder. It is because scarcity creates attention. A person who speaks constantly trains a room to filter them out, the way you stop noticing a sound that never stops. A person who speaks rarely trains a room to lean in, because everyone has learned, often without realizing it, that when this particular person talks, it usually matters. This is a quiet power that most deep thinkers never fully recognize in themselves. Their silence is not the absence of contribution. Their silence is the thing that makes their contribution land. The world spent years telling them to speak up more, to be more visible, to fill more space. But what actually made them valuable in every room they have ever been in was never how much they said. It was how much they meant it when they finally did. So let us bring this together. Speaking fast is not the same as thinking fast. Every word a deep thinker speaks has already been silently weighed. Their silence is active observation, not absence. They have learned that most words change nothing. And when they finally do speak, it carries a weight that constant talkers can never fully replicate. If you have spent your life being the quiet one in every room, this was never a flaw to fix. You were never behind in the conversation. You were simply somewhere most people never bothered to go underneath it, actually thinking, while everyone else was busy being heard. If this video finally explains something about yourself that nobody ever put into words before, leave a like. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need to hear it. And subscribe to InnerIQ, because this is exactly what we do here. We decode the minds that the world never took the time to understand. Are you the quiet one in most rooms you're in? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. See you in the next one.